Such a pleasure to be here. The Alphabet Sangha has been a significant part of my practice, my spiritual home for the last 12 years. And it has shaped me. It has like informed my practice and my teachings. And when I go in other places, I'm quick to talk about EBMC because of the unique nature of our kind of mission. Like this queer Sangha has been meeting for more than 10 years. And it's a very unique space. And so I have benefited so much from the community and the Kalyana Mita of spiritual friendships that I've made in this group. And so, yeah, just acknowledging that this is a very powerful and loving space. I am going to offer just a few topics and share a few perspectives, and then we'll go into this group. So watching the time carefully. So what I did was I went to some of my favorite friends. I've got a stack of books like a lot of us do that are sitting around, and they're useful for my teaching. So the first one is from Path of Emancipation, which is a Thich Nhat Hanh book. And I'm reading from a section on embracing your feelings, because I wanted to start by talking about the first and second noble truth. It's this powerful teaching that every Sangha gets to hear about multiple times a year. The first noble truth, there's, that everybody experiences suffering. And it's yet a teaching that is evergreen, right? There's so many ways to come at it and understand it. But I wanted to read a little bit from what Thich Nhat Hanh said. So he says, the Buddha's first Dharma talk is about dukkha, the first noble truth, which the translation is ill-being, suffering, or pain. Ill-being, the opposite of well-being. And it's a good choice of words. In the Buddhist tradition, ill-being or suffering is seen as a holy truth. You may ask, what's so holy about suffering and ill-being? And the answer is that by looking into the nature of your ill-being, not by running away, you will find the way out of it. If you try to run away instead of confronting or embracing your ill-being, you will not look deeply into its nature, and you will never have the chance to see a way out. That is why you should hold your suffering tenderly and closely, looking directly into it, discover its true nature, and find a way out. I mean, a succinct representation of why we sit with suffering. That the practice often calls us to build capacity, to build resilience, so that we can actually turn towards our suffering. The practices on the Eightfold Path of, wise intention, wise speech, all these wholesome activities generate within us a response that allows us to withhold kind of our instinct to be defensive, or our instinct to kind of shut down, because it is our practice that allows us to face the suffering, and only by facing it can we suffer, or can we change it. We must understand our suffering before we can shift it. If you can think of an experience you've had where, maybe your first contact with the suffering, I know as a queer man in my life, like I've been in places where my sexuality, right, my attraction, my identity as a queer man has put me in harm's way, right? I can think of being called horrible names and being teased on the baseball team that I played in when I was in 6th grade, right? That I wasn't comfortable in a lot of spaces, including the locker room and places that didn't feel safe to me. And I think that my own coming to understand that suffering and that pain, I was not able to do it when I was younger, and that's okay. But that this practice of holding our attention and focus, or bringing embodying practices, becoming aware of our grounding ability within our breath and our body, right? These tend to build resilience and strength. And from those places, I am able to connect with hard truths and uncomfortable suffering. So the invitation again is to notice the suffering and be present with it so that you can then change it. I'm just inviting you to think about places where you can really pat yourself on the back and be proud of yourself, and even extend a little bit of compassion to ourselves for noticing and being present with the pain. Oftentimes people tell me, I'm so glad you have that. When my mother passed away, it was the worst day of my whole entire life. And people told me, I'm so glad you have your practice. You can stay calm and you can stay zen about your suffering. That's not the way it worked, right? It allowed me to be present with the pain. It caused, it's very painful, but it was through that connection to the pain and not running from it that I was able to begin working with the suffering, which, by the way, didn't go all the way away, but I got more accustomed to it. It became more familiar. So just positing, the question of where in your life have you been able to engage with suffering, and where might you still be running away? The second musing is from Pema Children, from When Things Fall Apart. It's like flying off the shelf these days because it's very relevant in today's times. But I wanted to speak about compassion. She says, when we talk of compassion, we usually mean working with those less fortunate than ourselves. Because we have better opportunities, good education, or good health, we should be compassionate toward those poor people who don't have any of that. However, in working with the teachings and how to awaken compassion and trying to help others, we might come to realize that compassion action involves working within ourselves as much as working with others. Compassion action is a practice, one of the most advanced. There's nothing more advanced than relating with others. There's nothing more advanced than communication, compassion, and communication. I have a deep compassion practice that I've been working on for years, and Pema Children talks about it in lots of different ways, but I think that piece around having compassion for others requires having compassion for ourselves. Acknowledging that extending towards suffering that isn't exclusively our own, right, is a practice. And one of the ways that you get there is by grounding and settling inside yourself. It is such a gift to meet a friend who, has, I'm thinking about a friend of mine who recently lost her job and reached out to me, and in the midst of all the busyness and the competing priorities and competing timelines in my mind, what it took for me to be grounded and be present for her, and how powerful my extension of my compassion towards her was. It was so well received. She was so grateful, and I was so grateful, and in lots of places I can think of where I was not able to extend my compassion the way I wanted to, right? The causes and conditions in my own life may have caused me to be distracted, or my own suffering may have not allowed me to be as compassionate as I want to be. So how do I show up? One of the practices, advanced practice, for Pema, is around working on myself so that I can be prepared to be compassionate and meet others. Are there times in your life when you've been kind of quick to be compassionate, and other times where it's been maybe a little bit slower of a reaction? I wonder if you comb through some of the recent experiences of you extending yourself to be compassionate to others, or even yourself, like where were you able to do that easily? And were you grounded? And where was it more challenging? And did it have anything to do with the amount of suffering you were experiencing or some of your distractions? What I'll say is that I know that when I am full of food, fed, when I am well rested, and when I have a little bit of spaciousness, right? When my calendar is all these colored blocks and it's all full, that's not the best time for me to be compassionate. But when there are chunks and there's space and there's food and there's rest, that's so much easier. And so what does it mean? Can we actually be kinder to others by being kind to ourselves? Can we ground in ourselves to extend our compassion to others? I think so. The third book I want to reference is this incredible book called You Belong by Sebene Selassie. Oh boy, it's a good one. Sebene is on the East Coast, and she was a teacher in one of my teacher training programs. And she's got this beautiful skill of inviting people into their bodies in a very accessible way to ground. So this practice I'm talking about of getting present in your body and somatic experience and the ways that we can be present in our bodies that can increase our resilience and therefore allow us to extend compassion to others. So she says, it's in the chapter that's called Ground Yourself. It's about how you get into your body. She says, now try this. Connect with your body in whatever ways are most prominent in this moment. Can you feel your body right now? I mean, really, really feel your body. Are you thinking about your body, or are you sensing the body? How do you know? What sensations do you feel? Where? How do they feel? Is there vibrating, pulsating, tingling? Right now, even for a few moments, can you close your eyes and allow yourself to feel a sense of the body? Not needing to grasp or reject anything, just sensing, feeling your feet on the floor or your butt in the seat. Do you sense the contact, the pressure? Now, what about the breath? Do you sense it? Where? In the nostrils, in the belly? Do you feel the sensations of breathing? It's kind of this list of places that you can notice being present in the body. This isn't, may not be accessible for everybody, but this practice of bringing awareness, bringing awareness into your body in a way that allows you to shift. You'll feel differently when you pay attention to your body than when you just stay in your head for so long. Yeah, her name is Sebene Selassie. And then the last one I'll read from is an oldie but a goodie. Oops, sorry. Post-it notes. This is Love and Rage by Lama Rod Owens. Yep, he's in our network. He's our people, so we're familiar with him. But he talks about rituals in this really interesting way. And I was thinking about, in addition to grounding in the body, what other practices have been able to prepare me to be gracious and compassionate to others. And it's about having rituals, right? Whether it's like oiling my body after a shower, or whether it's like sitting down in the mornings to meditate, or if it's about stretching or prayer. And so Lama Rod says, the LGBTQ plus community has been excluded from many modern rituals. We were denied dating rituals in our teen years. We did not go to prom, and we developed our own rituals out of necessity. That's a quote from RuPaul, sorry. Here comes the Lama Rod piece. The first point of self-care for me is the development of rituals. Because I spend my life traveling as this traveling evangelist, I figured out what I need to make travel restorative. I know what I need in order to be well enough to continue moving from one place to another. I often say that the violence we experience is highly ritualized. And if that is the case, then our self-care has to be ritualized even more than methodological to meet this violence. Right, so this practice of like, can I bring ritual to help me ground and be centered? Can I meet this like violence of the everyday interactions with people? Can I meet that with ritual that will ground me and allow me to, in his example, allows him to travel and be talking about this teachings all the time. But in all of our lives, there's place to pause and really invite in a ritual, whether it's lighting a candle or pouring libations. I once had a cohort of fellows at work who believed that they didn't have rituals in their life, and I invited their reflection on, well, how do you celebrate your birthday? Oh, I have candles and a cake. Why? It's a ritual, right? What do you do before you go to bed? Maybe you brush your teeth, maybe you say a prayer, like that's a ritual. And so I just invite us to find these queer rituals. How do we queer the self-care and the ritual aspect in order to deepen our compassion for ourselves? Those are my questions, my reflections. I hope something I've offered is helpful, or at least catalyzing some thought for you.